you have everything in place to provide results.
How do you stay motivated on those days where you feel like shit and you don't want to do it?
When you're struggling to figure out like what's motivating you, what's helping you to start helping others.
So Jordan, what's your favorite kind of coffee?
Italian roast from Carpe Diem.
You're fancy as fuck, huh?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm. Damn it.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of the Mission Control Podcast, brought to you by yours truly, Michael Stearns and Ascend Digital Agency, proudly sponsored by the team at Roofer. If you need clean and pristine proposals to make your future customers buy, hit up Roofer. Jordan, you're doing a ton of content, man, and I hate to beat the same fucking drum all the time, but like, where do you become inspired? For those folks that know they need content and they're doing content or they're not doing enough content or they feel they're doing too much content, how do you stay motivated on those days where you feel like shit and you don't want to do it?
Oh, you know what? That is like the primary best first question, because I was not motivated Monday, Friday even. Like, I wasn't even the least bit motivated to hop on video. I'm like, man, like, is what I'm doing even helping somebody? And so what I did was, this is how I stayed motivated. I started finding everybody else around me and just started promoting and helping them. Like, no joke. I'm like, all right, who can I help? So I took a lesson from Simon Sinek, in which I watched on a TikTok content video. And I love Simon Sinek. Matter of fact, did a stitch today. And he said, when you're struggling with figure out like what's motivating you, what's helping you, is start helping others. And he said, when you start helping others, you're going to find that you're helping yourself. So I started creating videos for a few other people. One of them, I think it might have been you. Blue Pages Pro. I know I was going to create one for this podcast. Matter of fact, I was like, I still haven't. It's still in my brain to do it, but I was going to promote why you should listen to a podcast, because we talked about this before, and why you should do that. So anyway, so my goal is when I'm not motivated, I want to help others. So, which is the whole purpose of the content. So I started pushing out content that's promoting what other amazing thing people are doing. So and to translate that over to, like, let's say I'm a home service contractor, roofer. Start promoting what's going on in the community that's doing amazing. If you can't come up with enough helpful content for yourself and you're a business owner, start finding some amazing things in the community that maybe the local news is not talking about, something that you can bring awareness to, and start helping them with your content and using your brand and your voice. So I would say, in terms of motivation, like, that is what it's obviously still going down to helping motivate, but to the days that I don't feel inspired, which was here recently and happens way more than you think, I go in and go, how can I help others? And then once I've did that, I come back to my own content and I go, all right, how can I get creative? How can I inspire others? How can I help others? So simply taking the Simon Sinek lesson of helping others, and that's going to help yourself.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good point. Help others, and just not with content. Just be a good person. Help people in general. But especially if you're not feeling motivated and you need to create some content, piggyback off what's going on around you. Be aware, right? It starts with a heightened level of awareness, and then try to understand what you can do to put content out that is going to help them. And by virtue of doing that, it's going to build trust for you as well. That's a great point. What if I've got writer's block, proverbial writer's block as a content creator? I don't know what the fuck to talk about today. What do I do?
I do two things. I look for people in my industry who's doing content, right? Who's pushing out content. Or I did this morning too. Oh my gosh. I look at people who's my ideal audience, who are my customers, and then I start just watching what they do. And then I'm watching their content, or I'm watching their videos, and I'm seeing how they're reacting to things, and or how they're doing things, or what questions they're asking. So that's the first thing I did. So I did that today, actually. I started looking through content with roofers that were and other contractors that are on social media. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, what are they talking about? Mm-hmm. Is there something they're doing that I could help them with? Is there something I could do I could share with others, right? I found one piece that was really great. And it was a great way on how they described hidden damage on a roof. it was just fantastically done. And this person puts out a ton of social media content, so it was great anyway. So that's the first thing I do is I look at what others are doing. Second thing I do is I just hop on the normal sites that you SEO people talk about and probably use to research. Google, and I did a training on this too the other day. I came up with 20 questions that would create 20 content videos by using a simple Google search off of one question. Literally, I took one question. So the second tool I use is Google or Answer the Public or Quora or Reddit. Reddit is a big one too that people don't think about. Reddit is Reddit will tell you things that Google doesn't want you to know. And I saw this from another content piece. The guy was talking about, he said, if you go into Reddit, those are the honest conversations that people are having. Because Google's always going to show you what's the best user experience, what are other people searching. But they're going to get in the nitty gritty for you. So if you want to know what homeowners are really talking about when it comes to your space, start searching on Reddit. See if you can find subforums in there and that are people talking about roofing or contractors or whatever it is, and use that as a tool to find out more content pieces. You'll be surprised what you can find. So find what other people are doing and then leverage tools like Google, Reddit, and just start figuring out what questions are people asking.
That's really interesting, and I think that's a really good point as well. I do the same thing. Right? There's plenty of times where I'm like, fuck, I feel like I've created content about everything, and I don't want to be that guy just standing on his soapbox talking about a bunch of shit that people have already heard me talk about for hours and hours. So, I'll search a couple of my competitors. What are y'all talking about, right? What up, Tim? What you talking about? What are you talking about in the last few weeks? And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a piece of content about this. Or I'm going to do an offshoot of that content that's going to talk more about this, right? So maybe it's like very similar, but it's adjacent to it, not exactly the same. And, my content is going to have a different flavor than Tim's content, than person A, B, or C's content. So even if you're saying the same thing, it's probably going to be different anyhow. I've always been fascinated with the fact of there's a finite number of ideas to some degree, right? And I always got this when I was in school, and they're like, you got to write a fucking 15-page paper, and you need to have 6 peer-reviewed articles. And it's like, okay, fantastic. And it's like something like, should weed be legal? It's like, all right. The last 1,000 papers that were written on this is all saying the same shit. You're saying yes or you're saying no, and then you're giving supporting evidence, right? And it's just going to be mildly different as far as how you're articulating whether or not you feel weed should be legal or not. Or, I was a political science major, which is I don't know, I've always felt like it was a complete bullshit degree. But it's good, right? I spent all this money to get this degree that I never use. And, my plan was to become an attorney, which I still think that I'd be a good attorney. I just don't have law school in me. So I'm not an attorney, and I'm very happy with my career path. And we write papers about voting behavior and how do people vote. Is it along party lines? Is it based on what's passed down through your family values and things like that, or your peers, and how those different things influence how people interact with the civic duty of voting? I don't want to say a bunch of bullshit because you're discrediting an entire part of the higher ed curriculum, but it's if you're going to be a political scientist, it's really important. If you're not, I haven't found much importance to it. So it's important to have people in trades. I find a lot of value. There's a lot of comedic value in me between the divide of trades versus education. And because both sides of it have pretty hardline takes as far as why the other one's not a good idea. I feel right? You see a lot of the memes about here's this construction line worker that makes $200,000 a year, and here's this stupid bachelor's, this guy with a bachelor's degree that makes 60 and he has $150K in debt. I always love those because there's a lot of truth to that. With the saturation, the expense that's associated with getting a college education, and there's not enough. Sorry to get on a tangent here, guys, but there's not enough guidance as far as helping people understand what is it that you want to do in life. don't just, people are blindly going into a liberal arts degree or political science degree or a communications degree with zero fucking understanding of how that's going to apply to their life and how they're going to use that to make an impact. And at the end of the day, a bachelor's degree now is the equivalent of like a GED 40 years ago. Like, you're no more qualified than the other 100 people that are going ahead and applying for that job that you want. I digress.
Well, no, it's interesting you say that because I was a teacher, band director, 12 years. My wife is still in education now. Mm-hmm. I still believe wholeheartedly in public education in the sense of there are different aspects of it, and you can go down a long trail of what makes it great. But when you're talking about college, the last job I was at was in a rural area in Alabama. Yes, there are cities in Alabama. If you've never been here,
really?
People think we were. Yeah, tech cities for matter. Like Birmingham's becoming a big tech city. You'll be surprised. Some of the things that come here, but anyway, I digress from that point. But what changed towards the end of me teaching was I started telling, I was a band director, so I spent 7 years with the same kids a lot of times. Like, they'd start in 6th grade with me, they'd end in 12th grade. So I created some great connections. But what I told all these kids was, like, do you know exactly what you want to do? Like, if you want to be a doctor, great. You're going to have to go to college. You want to be a teacher? Yes, you have to go to college. Like, you're just going to have to. But too many of them are like, well, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just going to go to 2-year school or whatever and get my core classes out of the way. I said, don't even do that. Like, don't even waste your money on that. Because what happens if you decide you don't want to do it? Then you just spent, 15, 20 grand on core classes that aren't going to do you any good, right? If you're going to go to college, you know exactly what you want to do, then go. If you have no clue, don't go. Go find a job. And I was like, in this particular area, matter of fact, there was a plumber right down the street from where we were, and that dude made him himself, they made a lot of money, and plumbers make a lot of money, and
sure.
And he had a big business right there in Locust Fork, Alabama. And
do what now?
Locust Fork. We shoot guns up there.
Okay,
I've been going up there a long time.
I could see that.
We shoot the pew-pews. And so anyway, so I just tell them, like, look into trades. Look into I turned 2 guys into HVAC when I was there before I left. I showed them a path to HVAC. I showed them what they could do money-wise because I was transitioning from doing, teaching into marketing, and we were helping HVAC guys. So anyways, at the end of the day, schools are slowly switching to this. You don't see it because you're not inside schools every day, but they're switching away from the you have to go to college mentality to let's figure out what you want to do afterward. It's just slow. It's slow, but it is happening, and I know it's happening because I was inside of it. So, yes, me and you, because we're about the same age, I think, college was the path. That was the right way to go. Now, higher ed, unless specifically it's something you have to have like teaching or doctor or lawyer, you don't need college. And that's going to take time to get that to separate.
It's funny, like, the cyclical nature of it, right? Because my father, roofing contractor, GC, this fucking dude wouldn't teach me anything about fixing anything. Now I'm stuck paying through the nose because I'm not equipped with any of the skill sets, that he had in order to do just simple shit around the house, right? I tell everyone I'm the least handy person you're ever going to meet. Now, I've excelled at different things and have done really shitty at other things. And like I said, like, hands-on tasks, not my thing because of that. And maybe it's only partly because of that. But it's, it was always you have to go to college. Like, that's like, I'm going to be the first person to graduate from college in my family. And like, I held such a high sense of pride because of that. But it's like, now things are flipping, like you said, back towards like, let's figure out what you can do outside of college. Like, maybe you don't want to go to college. And I think that it's great to hear feedback that they're like the institution of education is starting to push people towards really trying to discover what that looks like. Because at the end of the day, my dad was always like, you're not going to get stuck doing roofing for $20 an hour thinking you're the king of the world. I'm like, that doesn't sound terrible. Like, if I get out of high school and I'm making $20 an hour in 2003, like that, I mean, that seems okay, right? But like that's not what he wanted for me. And I think it's important as a parent to understand, like, it's not necessarily always what you want for your kids. Like, help them figure out what they want. While we're talking about that. Yeah, but now it's kind of flipping, like you said, to like, let's figure out, trades, for instance. The demand is always going to be there for trade, and you can make the argument that as the population continues to expand, there's going to be more and more need for trade tomorrow, that more so than there was today, and a year from now more so than there was a year ago. And the pool of candidates for blue-collar work seemingly is getting smaller and smaller. I don't have any stats on that offhand, but I don't know really any contractors that are like, dude, we just have a large pool of qualified candidates. And I shouldn't even say qualified, like even ground guys, right? Like, not many people that are 20-somethings, I feel, again, this is subjective, are lining up to do blue-collar work. And I think what a lot of kids need to understand, teenagers especially, is like, it's okay to do blue-collar work, and it's pretty fucking lucrative, right? If you figure out, align yourself with something that you would like to do, and understand that just supply and demand is going to keep your wages pretty high for the foreseeable future. So, like, even if you're not running a company, if you're just involved in a blue-collar trade, like, there's going to be a lot of money to be made. And you're going to be far less dispensable than in a lot other industries if you're pursuing the trades.
Yeah, as long as you're not a dummy and lazy. Like, as long as you put the work in. I mean, there's millionaires that are buying other businesses out there just from they started in the trades, learned their way up, learned how to sell, and then next thing you know, they're jumping into the business. Now they're millionaires because they started in the trades. Like,
ooh, it reminds me of a post I saw yesterday. It was spicy, and I don't know if he was intentionally trolling the group or if it was just a misstep as far as how he chose to articulate himself. But I was in one of the roofing groups, and this guy's like, I'm a real estate broker. I graduated from roofing. And in the comments, guy's like, and rightly so, he's like, real interesting choice of words to say graduated. He's like, well, if you're not learning or evolving, you're dying or something like that. He's like, yeah, but you're just, you're implying that what you're doing now is more important than, what we do. So be careful how you word things. And then the comments went on. I want to revisit that post because it was entertaining. They're, the one guy's like, everyone's a broker of some kind now. Everyone's a real estate agent, and yeah, I like to circle back and kind of see how that conversation evolved in the threads.
But it's interesting because until I stepped out and started my own business, which is one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
It's still hard, especially to get it going in a field that I have. My background is in something completely different, right? So I've spent the past 2 years building relationships, showing what I could do. It's interesting when you take on that perspective of somebody who owns versus the people that harp on the owner or get onto them because they make the billions and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but like, you start a business and see how fucking hard it is. Yeah. And then come back and be like, oh yeah, that's why they deserve the millions. They're taking all the risk. And you're not hardly taking any. And I think now stepping in that arena, I used to be that other person thinking, well, they're taking all this money. And you got to be in their shoes, man. And it makes it hard to be that area. It makes it hard to be objective to what an owner's going through or the person that's making the money and what have they gone through to where you are. And then that just goes back to mindset too. Like, they're always going to be a worker. They're always going to be somebody that's on the roof. They're never going to get past that, move into sales into, owning a business, whatever. So I think you're right. Interesting choice of words there for graduating, but maybe they've earned it.
Sure. Just be aware of how things can be perceived that you say, and just be ready for the smoke if you draw the ire of somebody in the comments. And to your point, like you said, there's always going to be somebody on the roof installing. There's always going to be ground crews, and as it relates to roofing, and that's fine. Like that's not a bad thing. Like the world needs a little bit of everybody, and we all have different roles and what we aspire to. There's a lot of people that are fine knowing that they understand that what it takes to run a company is so much more than what it takes to show up from 8 until 6 during the summer, or, whatever their work schedule is like on the roof, and saying, you know what, I'm fine. Give me my $30 an hour, whatever it is. And I know that at the end of the day, I can leave this shit behind, and I don't have to deal with comp insurance or OSHA audits. Like, I'm good with that, right? And they're happy. They would never aspire to want to run a company because they understand all the bullshit that the person's going through that is actually running the company. And on the other side of it, it's funny when you have like employees that, think because you own the company, you're rich. Well, you're rich, right? Because they're looking at it through the lens of what they get compensated, and they see all the jobs that you're doing, all the roofs you're putting on, and it's like, and all the trucks that you have, and it's like, they're not understanding, the $50,000 insurance bill that you just got, right? And the $200K that you got to cut a check to the supplier at the end of the week, and the $50K in payroll a week. It's definitely an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's still to this day as hard as teaching and education was, and that's an industry of itself that gets beaten down by the outside public because they just don't know educate unless they have an educator inside it, right? They see what's on the news, they see headlines like in anything else, and they think this is such a crappy thing. And I'm like, or it's trying to. But anyway, I thought education was hard, but the business side and owning it and running it and building it, that to me is probably one of the hardest things I have ever achieved. Much harder than education ever was.
What specifically have you struggled with?
Oh man, it's to me. There's a personal development aspect of it that's like I was real confident as an educator. My degree allows me to be a principal of a school, and I'm pretty confident that I could run a school really well. But then I step into a world where I'm taking stuff that I've learned, and I think it's being confident in the fact that I can provide results on a client by client basis, or be able to how to handle that. And I think that self-confidence in what I do, which I know works really well. I know social media content works. I know contractors need to be doing it. There's too much evidence everywhere that the ones that do it well succeed. I know how to do all the things that need to do, but I think it's just until when you're starting out, it's until you grab enough people and have enough results, and then building that. So I guess it's more of just a self-confidence thing. I guess that would be it. It's just building enough self-confidence and knowing that you have everything in place to provide the results, which I know I do.
Yeah.
But until you have enough, you get it. Like when you first start out, it's having enough clients and enough.
I mean, dude, I think about it like not even when I owned my business, but like when I started in sales, and I would put together this, oh my God, it's this bulletproof presentation, right? And then they're like, how long have you been doing this?
That's the worst question in the world.
63 days. Dude, by now.
Yeah. Just buy.
Right. There's a certain level of trust associated with having that track record, that robust, portfolio of clients, right? That social proof that makes it easier for other people to make a decision, like regardless of the efficacy of what you're doing, how productive or non-productive you are. There's plenty of companies in any industry that aren't productive that do a shit ton of sales simply because they've withstood the test of time, they've done a decent job branding, whatever the case may be. I mean, it was like a stake through my heart anytime, like early on in my sales career, where somebody would ask that. And one of the times it was with like 7 attorneys about an hour away from home at a big firm that I was looking to work with. And I'm like, God, this was like, what was it, like fucking Title IX law. There was like so many things that I had researched that was so niche and specific, and I had such a good plan of attack to execute a marketing strategy. And I'm like, as soon as they asked it, I'm like, well, none of this fucking matters now. Yeah, I'm just gonna see myself out.
I'm going. See ya. How long have you been doing this? Well, and that's hard though, and that's where. Now here, I will say this though. That's where in my content, I try to put a lot of that up front. So my experience in what I know in my studies, the fact I practice what I preach, so I'm seeing what results come out of my own content. And then on top of that, like I've created videos and edited videos and I've even built some websites, not that great, but I've known how to do it since 2006.
Right.
Like I was going to post it. I got to find the video. My first, when vodcasts were coming out, video podcast back in 05, 06, I saw an old video that I did for a guitar class, and I created the video, shot it, edited it. It looks like shit, but I don't care. But it was super helpful, right? It helped because then I could teach 30 kids guitar, and I would do it through video and all this other stuff. And so I've been doing videos and editing videos and been creating websites and working on and creating social media for band programs. I've been doing that for years. So I know it works, right? And I just took it to translate it into business. So I try to put that up front in content where it's like, hey, yes, I just started Presto Media, so like I'm 3 months in. I don't have to do that. I've built content and brands with another marketing company, and the reason why I did that was because of when I jumped into this digital marketing industry. Like many of the people that DM you with that, I'll give you 20 to 30 leads a month. I jumped in. I was in there. I was a lead gen bro starting out because I didn't know any better. But I quickly learned that I was like, this shit doesn't work. So I started creating content, and I found a position within a marketing company that understood marketing, had plenty of clients, and I went and learned. And I learned through creating content and helping others in creating content. And so that's how I did it. And then I stepped out on my own and decided that I kept getting calls about creating content and needing video and how you doing this. And so I was like, you know what, there's a need in the industry. So let me step out and let me go take care of that need. So regardless of the fact that my business is only 3 or so months old, there's still experience and there's still value in there in what I'm doing. And I'm still learning every day, and I share what I learned and I put it in content, and I'm pretty damn open about what I know and don't know and what I can help you with and what I cannot help you with. So I think that helps up front with the content, is just being transparent about where I'm at and what I can do specifically to help you. Now, as I go, right, I'm going to be able to solve more problems. You know that. The more in depth, the better I get, the more results there are, the harder problems I'm going to be able to solve. And then I'll create content around that, right? So I think if you're starting out in your business, being upfront about that. Oh, you just started putting roofs on? Well, I'm going to go with somebody who's more experienced. Well, how do you show the value of your experience in your content? You just got to do that.
Yeah, I like that. And it's funny because even like I had Mike Stearns himself, I mean, and how people view me versus how I view myself, I'm sure are radically different. But like I felt like even when I started Ascend, like I had a pretty strong personal brand. Like I had people reaching out to me consistently. People knew who I was. But even when I started Ascend, it's like how long has Ascend been around? 6 months. But I've been doing it for 7 years. Right? And it's funny because it's like I always feel like it's discrediting. It's like, yeah, just by saying 6 months, you're not getting the full understanding of what I know. I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice. Let me re-answer that. 7 years. Yeah. So, but honesty is the best policy. Like, I couldn't agree more. So being forthright with people as far as what you do, what you don't do, how long you've done it, what your capabilities are, and letting them make an informed decision, I think is always the best practice. And I commend you for doing that, because there's a lot of people out there that don't do that. And they'll sell something and they'll fucking go watch a YouTube video and cross their fingers, cash the check, and we'll see how it goes. Which is not a great way to run a business, it turns out. So
no, and I find that the clients I do have love me for it.
Yeah,
And I do have one client that I've had for 2 years off and on, helping him with his business, and he now trusts me enough. We're actually talking like business strategy in terms of like how do we get his product into Lowe's. That was our conversation yesterday. How do we get this product here, 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 and here? What do you think? How do we market this? And where do we put
Shark
it?
Tank.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, shoot, Shark Tank, you could actually win. But so because I've been ingrained in helping his business for 2 years now, and we've now gotten into those conversations because I know his product well enough. I've shot enough video content for him. I've watched enough of people asking questions and answering comments and answering questions in his content that I understand what are people looking for. What kind of people are buying it. And so we're now moving into the more in-depth questions of, and I don't run ads, but for this one person, I really
Except when I do.
Well, it's one of those things where, like, because I ran ads originally for him, right. I know it works, right? So I just did it, but I don't want to do that because there's people like Mike Stearns that can do it way better than me. And if somebody's like, hey, I want you to run my ads, I'm like, cool, you're just going to have to be patient because it's not going to be great right out of the gate. But anyway, besides that fact, we get in the conversation now about how do we expand this business. And it's more on, and I think your clients will probably attest to this too, because we've had this conversation. It's like the business side of it now. It's like we're talking about how do we expand this? What are different tactics? And I'm even talking about sales. I'm like, here, talk to this guy, build you a sales team, and then you can step away and do this. And so we're even having those conversations. And I think that's neat because I would much rather at this moment have people like that trust me that much that they're having those conversations. And then that gives me more confidence in making sure that I want to put more effort and more everything into their business to make sure they grow. And so I think that's important. And in my stage and journey of building Presto Media is making sure that I'm bringing in the right people. They trust me. I trust them. And we're building something together. I would much rather have that at the moment than trying to just, I need people, I need money. Because, you still got to pay bills, right?
Yeah, and I got to be honest, there's nothing more fulfilling than when I'm sitting with a client and, they're asking me all sorts of different things that aren't related to their SEO, their Google ads, as far as because how far above and beyond we've gone to understand the complexities of their business, the structure, what their day-to-day operational pain points are, and things like that. That shit feels really good to know that somebody values your opinion on something at that scale, right? Their entire livelihood, right? So to know, what that tells me is that I'm doing a really good job at what I'm doing as far as my job, and even above and beyond that. So it's like, dude, the rewardingness, the fulfilled nature of, that as a byproduct is fucking amazing. Like you said, we're all in business to support ourselves and our family, but I never found something that I did for work that I love and got any sense of fulfillment from. It was always when I was in college, I had my daughter when I was 19, so I was in college part-time, working full-time, raising my daughter. And, I did what I had to as far as a job that I could make money at that was flexible with my schedule because I wanted to graduate from school. And then it's I fucking hated it. And in a sales position, I was less than fulfilled just because I didn't necessarily agree with the way that the company was ran. And that's not really my call to make, right? But in starting Ascend and having these relationships with clients, it's fucking amazing. It really is. So I can understand why that feels so good for you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's neat. It's a growing thing for me, right? If I'm helping somebody else grow their business in other different ways other than creating content, then that just helps my business too, right? I'm thinking, how does this translate to me and what I do? And I think that's important. And and when you're creating content through social media, and you talk about knowing the business, you have to know and understand the business, right? And the neat part is me as a consumer, I'm like you. My dad literally the other day goes, "Oh, I'm gonna build a garage before New Year's." I'm like, "You're gonna build the whole garage before New Year's? It's December." "Yeah, I get done in a couple weeks." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I couldn't build a side of a fence that was 50 feet long in 3 weeks." And And, I mean, it's just like, hey, I'll get it done. And he's 60 something, 70 now. Anyway, besides that point, I didn't know. I completely went off the rails of where I was going with this.
It's all good.
I don't even remember what I was talking about. There was rounding the point about where we were talking about what were we
Helping people in learning different things.
Yeah. So I think being able to help with those types of things and do that, because I said I'm not a contractor by any means, and I can't do those things, but to be able to help somebody do that is definitely fulfilling.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. What is the most painful misstep in your first few months of starting Presto Media?
I'll tell you exactly what it was. I went right into telling contractors what they should be doing with their content instead of explaining to them why they should be doing it. And I got called out on it big time by I consider him a mentor. He was in a mastermind I was with. He runs social media for a large sales company. He sends me a message and goes, "Hey man, so I see your content rolling through all the time." I said, "I appreciate that." He says, "Really good. That's cool." He goes, "But you're missing one thing." I was like, "What's that?" He goes, "You're not telling people why they should be creating content." Like he said, because I had a bunch of marketing companies reach out to me like, "Hey, you're doing this video stuff. Cool. I may need your help in the future," but it was not who I wanted to serve. Right. I don't mind serving marketing companies, right? If they want content, I can help, because they were marketing companies in the home service space. So I know their customers, so I can help them. But besides that, I wanted to serve contractors because I know they're 10 years behind when it came to creating content. So I was like, well, that's a big need in the market. That's something I can help with. So anyways, he reached out to me and was like, so you're in an industry that they need to know why they need to do this stuff. Yeah. Why should they be creating content? And you're not talking near enough about that. So he said, it's gonna suck, and you're gonna be in a big uphill battle if you keep talking about this. So I made a massive pivot in my content. I was like, he's right. I need to be talking about why contractors should be creating content, what position. I started speaking to their symptoms, and why is it they're not getting jobs, and why is it that they're a one-man show, they have no content, but then they're reaching out going, hey, can I work with a bigger company for a few months to get money for Christmas? Like, I've seen that in multiple posts, and I'm like, what have you done content-wise to build your own brand of business, right? And so it's one of those things where that was my biggest misstep, was I didn't think about why they needed to know it and why they need to be doing it. And then that would be step number one, big misstep. And it happened fast, thank goodness.
Yeah, better earlier on than beating the same drum for a year. And it's like, fuck, I've been missing the target this whole time. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Was there a defining moment where you said, you know what, I'm leaving teaching behind and I'm getting into something else?
What would be the defining moment? It was, I'll have to say it was COVID. I was, as a band director, we spend a lot of time away from home, and I was teaching junior high and high school, so it was 6th through 12th grade. Way more responsibilities, way more work. It was an hour from where I was, and my boys were 1 and 3 at the time. So when COVID hit, I didn't have anything to do, so I basically got paid to sit at home because what can you do? And I started exploring. I started spending more time with them, realizing that I can't do this, be a teacher, be an educator, and have time with my family. So I said, I have to find another way and use my skills to be able to be more available to them. And it's not going to be through education. And in education, and in the band world, in education, is very political in the state of Alabama. Go figure. You have to go to certain universities to get some of the bigger jobs in the areas you're in. That's just the way it is. And I never landed in that realm. And I know some people are like, well, that's just an excuse. I'm like, I've been trying to build relationships for 12 years in Alabama. It's just hard. Anyways, long story short, I realized it was not, it could be another 5-10 years before I got into that realm. And I just wasn't happy. And I wasn't going to miss another 5 or 10 years of my kid's life. So COVID made me realize I have to do something different. Even if it means for a while I'm going to struggle, and I have struggled and still struggle. because that's the early stages of it. And so it was that moment sitting there, putting up a fence, spending time with my kids, going, I have to do something different. And I think that was a defining moment. I didn't realize it at the time, but that when I look back, that was it. It was me building a fence and me sitting with my kids going, crap, this is what I'm missing, and I can't miss that. So that would be it.
Look at that, taking a shitty situation like COVID and lockdowns and all that stuff that had negative impacts on a lot of people's life, and finding a silver lining in it and making the best of it.
Yeah, and so I think it did that for a lot of people, though. It's not just me. Yeah, it did it for a lot. How did it affect you? I'll ask you the question. How did it affect you?
Well, it was kind of the same thing. That's kind of when I decided, you know what, I want to do my own thing. You know?
And that happened again later to me when I worked with, I won't name marketing companies that I worked for because I'm not going to do that. But when I learned quickly that I needed to learn more about the marketing space and not just be a lead gen bro that ran Facebook ads, I was like, I need to learn more. And so I got connected with a marketing company. They hired me to do their content and build I will say the Preferred Contractors brand and the podcast. So I got to do the podcast. But I know I had to learn, but there was a defining moment in that time that when people were reaching out to me, like, dude, you're super helpful. Like, I think Chris Scoble was one of the first ones. He was like, dude, like you just help people all the time. That's all you do. Like you haven't asked for anything. You haven't begged for anything. You just like, how can I help? How can I help? And I kept getting that a lot. How do you do in content? How do you do that? And I think there was one day that I wasn't quite in agreement with that company with how they wanted to pursue the content and build the brand. We didn't agree because I was the one actually having the conversations and building relationships, and other people were not. So I didn't agree, like you said. Didn't agree with the way it was running, so I just cut it off. I had one person ready to jump on board with me as far as a client, and I was like, that was it. I knew content needed to be done. I knew people needed help with content, and so there's a defining point in that part to go back and go. I won't say I'll never go back and work for somebody, but I'm about 90% sure I'll never go back to work with somebody. I will learn from every people. I learn more in the relationships I build than I do working for somebody.
Yeah, it would. The situations would have to be dire with a lot at stake for me to say, you know what, I'll go work for someone else. I told my wife we'll live homeless under a bridge before that happens. So I'm like, you better hope that this whole depend on the sun thing really takes off because I don't know if you'll like the lifestyle of living homeless under a bridge. Ask me a spicy question. Let's get one spicy question before we wrap up.
Ooh. For you or for me to answer? Because I can give you spicy.
You can fucking do both. Let's get it.
I always think about the word marketing itself and how to phrase this. I want to phrase this question the right way. The biggest misconception of what marketing really is. And I don't know how to phrase it in that question because I think people think marketing means I'm getting jobs or I'm getting leads. Like
20 to 30 leads.
20 to 30 leads a month. Or do you want to know, this could be a spicy, like, do you know why, I can tell you exactly behind the scenes of the industry of why you get those messages. I mean, that's a spicy question. Like, why do you keep getting them? And I know why.
Well, I think there's a couple different aspects to that answer, right? So people are fucking lazy and, they lack sales acumen and the desire to properly prospect. And they understand that, that's a shiny object for a lot of contractors, especially ones that are struggling to make ends meet and for their companies to flourish is like they need jobs, right? So it's something they really need. And if you can solve somebody's pain point, well, it's great. The problem is like back to like the sales acumen, the prospecting, it's like there's zero fucking effort that goes into it. And I mean, contractors over the years have gotten better and better at sniffing that stuff out to where, now it's a running joke. But, there's a lot of different ways to sell. There's a lot more ways not to sell. And I think that, for anyone's watching this who does the 20 to 30 lead thing or, some sort of shitty sales approach like that, like you should put time, energy, effort into how you're prospecting, have a plan to where like you're actually going to help that person as opposed to being a sleazy, underhanded salesperson that's all sells, you're a charlatan. We don't want any charlatans in the industry, and I'm not going to name names, but you go into the roofing groups and you'll see plenty of people who've been taken advantage of by said snake oil sales people. And it just makes my job harder, and at the same time, it makes it easier. So there's a fucking paradox there. So I don't know how to feel about it because it's like easier for us to differentiate, but at the same time, it gives a heightened level of scrutiny towards anybody. Like one bad apple ruins the bushel, right? So now people are scorned and have broken-hearted syndrome about this marketing company that promised them 20 to 30 leads, but they got 3, and now they don't trust us. Yeah. It's like, man, I like this girl in 6th grade, and I bought her the Mariah Carey's Greatest Hits CD, and my sister wanted to kill me because of it, and I thought I loved her, and, she broke my fucking heart, but guess what? I'm married now, and I love my wife. I didn't carry all that negative energy from the last relationship or the first relationship into this one, and I know I say that in jest, and it's not the same, but, yeah, spend some time finding actual, like, investigate who it is that you're going to try to sell things to. Understand how you truly will be able to help them, not just how to grab their attention, and then show them. That seems easy enough, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you're in business and you're not committed to, if you don't have the core values, you hear that a lot, right? And I'm still developing mine because I'm early on. So I'm not like, hey, there are things that obviously I want to be trust and, I'm going to be true to who I am, right? But it's having core values and then sticking by those and truly wanting to actually help people and not just help your customers, but help people you hire. How am I going to help their families? How am I going to serve their family? And you hear people talk about all the time, from the Tommy Mellos to the who else talks about it? That's got
Tommy Mello. If you're watching this podcast, which I doubt you are, I sent you a friend request like 9 months ago. Go ahead and accept a friend request.
He does. I don't think he accepts anybody's. I watch his stuff all the time. I like him. He seems like a decent dude. But the only reason why I know him is because his content came across my stuff all the time. Just like I know who Mike Stearns was before I met Mike Stearns because his name kept popping up in Facebook groups of who to trust for marketing companies. And
that guy's the worst.
Yeah, I used to see him and go, who is this guy? Like, where did he come from? He must be a douche. No, I'm just kidding. No, his name popped up all the time. Him and a few others. And so, obviously his reputation was built through his clients, and referrals and what kind of results he had. So, but yeah. No,
ask your clients to endorse you. Ask your happy homeowners to go spread the word. Invite them to Facebook groups. Tell them to keep an eye open when they're on Nextdoor, right? All these little platforms, big platforms where people are asking for your services that you aren't, they may be present there, but you have to ask them. You have to show them the way. Plant seeds. Super important.
Well, and that's the power, and that's something I talk about too. And this is one of the big things that I've switched from is talking about, like, you need to be creating content for that 60%-ish of people that are going to be ready to buy in the next 3 to 6 months, or going to pass on your name to somebody else, right? Like, you're always there. That's why it has to be constant and consistent. And you know this. That's why it needs to be consistent blogs coming out, consistent everything, is because it's not that you're focused on that less than 10%. That 60%. That less than 10% had to come from the 60, so they're eventually going to move into ready to buy from you. But if you're not constantly trying to always be ahead of the game and you're just playing catch up by trying to find that minute 3% people are ready to buy from you right now, and you're not building value up front. And I think that's the hardest part, because in the beginning it takes time to do that, even referrals. But when you're creating content and why it should be consistent all the time and why it's so hard, that's what you're creating it for. So like right now, I say I'm in month 3 of business. I'm starting to gain traction in all of my content now. But it took 3 months of me posting consistent 3, 4, 5 times a day for people to start seeing my stuff. Now people start kind of seeing who I am, and they'll eventually, hopefully, trust me if they like me, if we connect, and start reaching out, right? I'm not going to hop into your DMs. I don't do that. Unless you ask me to, then I will. I don't slide into them. If you like what I have to see and my content's good enough, you'll reach out, or somebody refer me. So I think making sure as a business owner, making sure that you're always, like you said, planting the seeds. You're always asking for referrals, always asking for endorsements, and then you never stop that process. That cycle can't stop. Because once it stops, more than likely the business is going to dry up.
See, it's wild. It's, the most fundamental and like easiest way to get business is by asking people that are happy to get you business. And in every sales position or organization I've been in, it's been probably the least leverage. People just forget to ask. And it's like there's still a percentage of your customers or your homeowners, whatever, that'll go out of their way to mention it when people ask. But there's going to be a much larger percentage, if you are vocal about, setting that expectation and what it would mean to you if they did that. There'll be a much larger percentage that advocate for you if you take that approach. Promise. Mike Stern's guarantee today on the Mission Control podcast. So somebody go do it and prove me wrong, and then I'll bring you on the podcast and we can talk about it.
And dissect it down.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. If people are interested in all the great things you have to offer, Jordan, what's the best way for them to inquire?
Get to know me first.
That's a fucking great answer.
Get to know me first. And you can do that through all of my content. So on Facebook, it's if you're friends with Mike, you can find me through there. But it's I think it's jjordanharrison.presto. So that's Facebook. You can find me through that handle there. TikTok and Instagram, that's the only 3 platforms that I'm really on consistently. It's at jjordanharrison. So follow my content, get to know me, get to know what I have to offer, get to know the value that I'm dropping. And then if that is something you need, that's going to solve a problem. Because my goal is to make content creation as easy and as headache-free for contractors as possible, using the most limited amount of equipment. And so right now I'm building out, you've probably seen some of the videos. I have a Facebook group that not to like nurture the group, but just to throw guides that I'm building out right now that's going to give you everything you need to create content using a cell phone. I don't have my mic and a mic, and that's it. I'm going to show you how to shoot it with a video, how to do all these things. And
what's the name of that group?
Video content for contractors.
Straightforward.
Yeah. So yeah, that's super simple. It's exactly what it is. That way, once again, if you get to know me on my socials and on my content, you get to, you like what I have to offer. Because I do put out offer posts, because you have to put out offer posts. You have to offer your services. And you like the value that's brought in the video content for contractors, which I'm pouring a lot of stuff into it at the moment, and that seems worthwhile, then just find me in the DMs in one of those, comment on one of my posts. That is the best way to reach me. But
send a carrier pigeon with a note. Fucking do something.
Right? Yeah, I'm in Alabama, man. You can find me. I'm in Birmingham. It's easy.
Throw them bees up. Well, again, man, I really appreciate you. Jordan Harrison, Presto Media, thanks for coming by, brother. I appreciate all that you do, and I appreciate your approach to helping the industry.